Hello, everybody. I am joined here today with Ty and Elena, my magical friends, to talk about channeling today. Thank y'all for joining me. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
Excited to be
Yes.
here.
Before we start talking about channeling, I have a question for both of y'all. So, if animals wore clothes, which some animals obviously do wear clothes, we dress up our pets and things, but if animals wore clothes, which animal do you think would wear the silliest clothes?
Ooh, that is a tough question. Probably a turtle. Maybe a turtle.
Okay, turtle, cute.
Yeah. I was thinking like more like a big bear or like a tiger, one like a more of like a predator and just some cute like little silly like skirts or little dresses.
I love that.
That's the thing with a turtle. Like no matter what you put on them, they're gonna look weird because they got a different body shape.
Yeah, to get it over that shell.
Yeah.
That's cute. I'm imagining like a bear with a tutu on now that you said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or imagine a turtle with a tutu.
Oh, that'd be even cuter.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's giving Zootopia. So I wanted to ask, what does channeling mean to both of y'all?
Sure. You want to go first, baby?
Sure. So for me, channeling has kind of been something I've recognized that we do most of our life. When before I got into like my spiritual awakening stuff, you get those gut feelings, you get those little nudges, little guidance that at the time I wasn't realizing that that's little nudges from me, trying to help guide me, or just information or just something to help me. And when I realized that, I was like, wow. So I started following all the little synchronicities and all the magic, because that's really what it's all about when you start recognizing that the universe is always speaking to you. So when you can start decoding like what all that means, it's like so magical. I love it. But when I started really getting into channeling, so I was connecting with a meditation that I got my light language an activation, I guess. And so, sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'm loving it.
So when I was activated in this meditation I was doing, I was like, I felt this huge orb of light just inside of me. And it's like I could see the words in my head. So it was super interesting because I was like, what is happening? So I was just letting it flow out, and it was just all this different light language, different dialects. So when I went through that, I had texted him. I was like, "Oh my God, I think I just had my light language activated." So I started learning that I need to set parameters and boundaries and intentions, because intentions is key. So that's kind of where I started in with my channeling, and yeah, it's been a journey, learning and remembering more every day. So.
That's beautiful. That's a lot to download in at one time. Like all the templates at once.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with me, I think that we're channeling all the time. Like that's like it's just a matter of what are we channeling. And so recognizing that when we're in that flow state, it's a form of channeling, right? So with me, I think that we're channeling all the time. It's just a matter of what we're connecting to when we are channeling it through us.
That's beautiful. Do y'all ever do channeling together?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I just say, like what he was saying, when you get in that flow state and this, you just allow your receiving and just kind of just going upstream, not fighting the current, because that was a big thing I went through, was swimming against the current. And when you realize, like, hey, just go with the flow, like everything's working for you. It may not be comfortable, it may be, something that you need to go through, but just allow it, And that was a big thing for me.
What do y'all feel like helps you get into flow state?
For me, music, dancing, even I'm a gamer, so I like to play games. Anything that just kind of keeps my mind still. I have a very busy mind. I mean, there's just so much going on up there. It's loud. I keep saying I'm always going, it's so loud there. But if I can do something where I can channel it all into one activity, it really helps me. And in fact, I didn't know channel writing was a thing, but I used to write and journal a lot. And when I started rereading things, I was like, did I write that? Holy crap. So I started realizing that I'm a much better channel writer because I can get all my thoughts down more eloquently inappropriate, because when I'm speaking, sometimes mine's going so fast. I'm like, I forget to say this or I didn't say that, and it's all playing in my head. But I'm like, wait, did I say that? So when I can write it, it just comes out very appropriate for what I'm trying to express. So yeah, channel writing. That's where that's where I'm at. So I like to keep a journal and a dream journal and just anything that's going on. I like to get it out, because once I can get it out of my head and on paper, it kind of dissipates in my head. It's not so much going on up there.
With your channel writing, do you ever ask questions and then have things
Yes.
come through, or do you just kind of do a dump and let whatever you're going through come through?
When I first was, most of the time when I was writing, it was just kind of like a dump, letting it all out. But I do ask questions now. If I'm going through something, I'll just kind of, I feel like I can be, I don't know if it's just more like raw when it's that way, because if some things maybe I'm like, don't really want to say, or it's uncomfortable to talk about, I just kind of let it all out, like I'm speaking to me, but not me, so I can get it all out. So it's not like I don't feel any shame or guilt or anything around that. I just get it out. But yeah, I do. I'll ask questions, guidance. I scried a few times, which was really cool. Just kind of, got I think it was some kind of charcoal, and then you just kind of, just draw out what I see, and then I'll kind of interpret that by asking a question and kind of put together, decode it to see what, the message was that I was asking.
That's awesome. I've had a couple of people recently ask me about having fragmented channeling come through, like whether it's images or words or narratives. And I said, okay, get out a sheet of paper and write out the fragment and then try and deduce what that means. Sit with it for a second and then write the next fragment. Sometimes that'll create the storyline and help you perceive with more clarity. Have y'all ever had any issues with like fragmented things coming through like that before, or how did y'all work through that if it was?
I tend to get data a little bit different than most people. I definitely like the main way that I interface is through like claircognizance and clairsentience. So with me, it's really about like understanding how I interface with that particular way of receiving information. And for me, I have to be in a flow state. Like I have to, I'm essentially in a channeling state all the time. And if I'm not in a channeling state, then it kind of like messes me up completely. And so like if I try to structure what's coming through, it usually messes stuff up. So but I'll tend to forget it too. So I won't recognize that I'm actually receiving information until I'm in the actual like flow state. So I don't really get it like fragmented in that way, but I do get like pings. So if data comes through in a certain way, it will like initiate like a type of feeling that kind of pings me. And so I'll have that little bit of data. And then I'll find out through like synchronicity, it'll pop up in something in a reflection outside of me that fills in that like gap, the puzzle piece, and they'll like snap in place. So like I'm kind of a dingus and I'll just kind of forget stuff all the time. But for the most part, it's like I'm either all fragmented or it's like it just drops sync fully.
So when you're in the channeling state, most often, you mean just like in life, we're just like in channeling most often?
Yeah, I have like legit have to be in a channeling state. Like that's what I realized over time is that it's just it's really, if I'm not in a channeling state, it creates a lot of issues in whatever I'm doing. And I realized even back through school or through athletics or whatever it is, I've always was in that channeling state. So I did a lot of like design work. So I come from like kind of a art background. And since I don't interface in with visualizations really at all, I found that I was just letting whatever needs to come through. And whether it's designs or like web development or whatever it is, I have to let it come through. And then years later, I'll go back to it and recognize that it was absolutely a channeling state. Like recognizing the colors that I use now, knowing what I know now is that it's relevant for whatever is coming through at that time.
It's really interesting because I have claircognizant and clairsentience are my strongest ones. And I just kind of get into that state. I wonder how different people interface, like you're saying, that have other gifts like clairaudience and clairvoyance, or that maybe they're not in that continuous state as much. Like it's more of like a hurdle to get through to like be
Right.
in those states of being, right? Where claircognizance and clairsentience is just kind of on all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's I think it has to do also with how much you're connecting with your higher aspects in some ways. Like if
Mhm.
you're are you processing through the programs of like the personality structure, like the ego structure, or are you allowing what's naturally already available to us in the quantum field to naturally like come through? So I think it's there's kind of like a feedback loop that maybe other people have where it's where they're running through these programs that they've kind of adopted or developed or like picked up on from other people, and then they're like stuck in this little repetitive program of like constriction through the ego structure. But I think for a lot of us who are a little bit more tapped into our higher
Mhm.
aspects, it's like a natural, it's just like a supernatural thing where we're essentially always in a channeling state, in a flow state, best we can be, right?
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I even earlier I was on a walk and I started having some like thoughts that were not in congruence with my higher facets. And I was like, oh, are we looking through the human lens right now? Or are you looking through the multidimensional lens, right? You can almost feel like the density shift,
Yep.
which is fine. You know, everybody experiences that, but it's just, hey, let's look at these things through different perspectives whenever we can. Yes. So Elena, what is it that you channel?
So as far as is when I set intentions to channel, I just set the intentions to channel aspects of self that are in 100% alignment with me. I have never really felt drawn to channeling outside of that. Not that any way is right or wrong. So yeah, when I call in my higher self channel, if anything, if I have like if I'm working with him, for example, I'll call in his higher self, but that everything has to be through my higher self. And
Mm.
as far as as far as when I set intentions, yeah, I know that you channel aspects of self too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I pretty much only work with aspects of myself. I have tried like channeling other things. So I have experienced because you can channel anything, right? Like you can
Yeah.
tap into information or the data stream and then allow that to move through you. And then so I experimented quite a bit with that and it didn't feel comfortable. Like I tried channeling different, like, like I tune into something like tongues, right? Like it's essentially the same thing as light language, but it's a certain type of data stream. So like I
Mm.
could essentially tune into it whatever it was. So like tongues, and I'd be like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to channel this expression of tongues, like they do in the churches or whatever. And it just feels really strange. Or if I try to bring through a certain, individual or deity and be like, okay, I wonder what that feels like to channel that through me, and it's just really uncomfortable. It's just something that I personally am not like. It doesn't feel right in my body, so I've always just stuck to channeling aspects of myself, and that happened very naturally too. Just like a very natural process. And in the beginning phases, I had no idea really what was taking place. When I got activated, or at least when it got forced out of me, like light language and other forms of light linguistics, got forced out of me. It got literally forced out of me. It was like holding it back for so long because my ego structure was like, nah, that's other people's things. That's not for me, because I didn't actually understand it. And eventually it got pushed through, and it was like a dialect after dialect, and they all sounded like weird alien things or a different language, what all, but it was very visceral, and I was feeling it through every bit of me. And at the same time, I was a little freaked out, not knowing, like, am I possessed? Like, what is going on
Yeah.
here? Or like, actually, what was happening? I still knew that it was aspects of myself, and that led me down the path of trying to figure out what was actually happening, or like what were these. I knew that they were me, but I hadn't had anybody articulate something like that before. And when I've seen other people speak light language, it's very much like a one language, and it's
Mhm.
like there's some little variations, but it was like a different dialect every few seconds for like an hour. And then I couldn't speak English afterwards too. So I was trying to speak English and describe what was taking place, and I would just speak light language. So it like tripped me out quite a bit. But diving deeper into it, I started to recognize that those are other aspects of self, right? They're just different versions of me.
Yeah. I haven't really set the intention to try to channel outside of myself as of now. Just as like you said, it just doesn't feel in resonance with what I'm doing currently. And that, it can always change. There is no right or wrong way about it. But yeah, for now, I've just kind of been setting the intention to channel, aspects of me, and anything will be channeled through my highest self, to be channeled through me.
I think it's a really solid point because that's not going to resonate with everybody to channel spirit guides or entities or beings, and I think some people are a little trepidatious about getting into channeling because they're worried about getting into that type of work. And I say you could just channel from your higher self or your
Yeah,
inner children. Like if you just want to do that, or like you were saying, filter everything through your higher self, that's okay too. You don't have to contact anything you don't want to contact.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're plugging into different streams of information, and it's going to be done through the filters of each individual's like ego structure and whatever programs are there. So there's like an aspect of it, even if we're connecting to another being or a council or a group or whatever, as it's channeling through the individual that is channeling it, it's always going to be going through their filters, their ego structure. Not in a negative way, of course, like ego bat. Like it's just whatever kind of filters. It's a particular lens of translating that information that at its core is just pure frequency, and it's not necessarily directly in words. And so like there's that chance that as you're connecting in with this different information, that it may not be in perfect alignment for the individual that's trying to channel it. It's kind of like you take on some of that code. If you're just plugging into like Wi-Fi's or something around, just connecting to different people's Wi-Fi's, there might be some, encryption issues that you can become aware of. But there's always things that you can do, you can put in place that can assist that. But that's why, like channeling, that's why for the most part, I don't really channel in English. I try to like translate certain ideas, get information and then try to translate it in English. And it just doesn't feel right because I feel for me, it doesn't feel like absolute what is true. Like it's a truth. It's like trying to translate an idea from someone else into your own words. Even if like light language, if I let's just say that I'm using light language to express the idea of I love you, right? If I'm like using light language, I'm like I love you. The individual might just feel love. They might just feel the frequency of love, or they might hear I am loved or Ty loves me, right? Because that's ways of it coming through their particular personality structure that makes sense for them. But what is true is like that pure frequency of the idea of what's trying to be communicated, and that's always like almost impossible to fully translate in absolute truth, right? Like it's always going to be like a flavor of it. So like if I'm ever channeling in any information, I'm recognizing that it's just data, right? So taking it in as just data and then weighing that on what other data that I might have available to me, or how that feels, or bouncing it off other clairs, so that you can get kind of like a truth detector for how it feels for you. Like not that something is right or wrong or accurate or inaccurate. You can just like take it as data and just feel how that feels for whatever you're trying to communicate or express.
Human languaging is difficult sometimes of bringing down the
Absolutely.
concepts and the understandings. So many
Absolutely.
times when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, hold on, I got to find the words to like fit into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be in a session and I'll start to see or experience their guides coming in, right? And with me, I just see them as the pure frequency. So I don't see the costume that they wear, right? So I don't see like, oh, it's your grandfather or whatever it is.
I love that the costume that they wear.
Yeah, that's how I perceive it, right? They're wearing
Yeah.
a costume, and so I'll see them almost like I'll see them as the light that they are, but in my field essentially like in a grid based on their frequency and like how close they are. Like everything essentially in the field represents their expression of that pure frequency. And then they might wear that costume of being whatever, an Arcturian or whatever it is. But when once I express that I recognize them, that they're there, I'll sometimes express it to the individual that I'm working with and being like, you got homies here.
Yeah.
I keep it simple. Like you got some homies here. And then sometimes once I do that, they'll want me to, they're like, oh, he sees us, or he knows that we're here. So I'll feel them try to express that they want some messages to come through, right? So I'll get like this just pinging of this energy where it's like, okay, like that knowing through the clear cognizance that they're trying to communicate this kind of message. And I'm always like, that's not really what I do. I don't translate.
You're like, I can't do that, but it's not really what I do.
I know you're trying to say something to them, and I'm like, that's not what I do. So I'm always like, that's not what I do, but I will express the pure frequency of what they're trying to get across, right? Like letting them know that they're supported, or they're working with this area of the field, or whatever it is. But as far as like trying to translate what they're trying to articulate, it just always hits me like I'm not going to do it right. It's like, I'm like, it's not fully true, right? Like even if I am trying to articulate what they're saying, there's going to be my filters that I feel when I express it, whether I change up a word or whatever, use a different art. The human language is so restrictive. So yeah.
And sometimes they want things said in very specific ways. And I'm like, no way for me to articulate that. I'm sorry.
I let people who are good at that stuff do it. Like you're great. You know how to articulate and translate it. But for some of us, like that's, it's just not our thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I always looked at it yet.
Yeah.
So when you do have people, let's say guides or ancestors or whoever coming through, so if they're wanting you to verbalize in English, do you ever translate that into frequency instead to send to somebody, and you don't actually articulate and verbalize the words to the person?
Yeah, usually. Yeah, usually I'm just going to work with the energy, or their whatever they're experiencing on their end is going to be what it needs to be, right? Like there's a lot going on. And so I usually try not to, like, I'm always guided to not put it in boxes or try not to restrict it too much, unless it's really going to be beneficial for the individual that's, whatever they need at that time.
That's a really cool gift of being able to like alchemize the words into frequencies. That's pretty neat. Yeah. Elena, what does channeling feel like to you as far as when you are physically, or not physically channeling, when you're channeling, what does it feel like physically?
Yeah, well, clairsentience is currently my strongest clair. So usually when I'll just use him for example, when I'm working on him, and I connect, I'll feel first. So I'll feel where I'm feeling, I might have a pain here, and then I start asking questions, because then I'll use my clairaudience and then my claircognizance. So, like just for example, when I was working on him, we had like a huge pain here. So I'm asking questions like, okay, well, what can I do here? And then I'll hear like, the answer, and then I'll do that. And then I felt this energy that felt like smoke. So I was like, okay, so how can I remove this? And I'm like, oh, blow. So I was just blowing it. So I just kind of decode all with my different clairs. I'll ask questions and just use all of them, and just try to get to where I'm trying to get. So yeah, I just feel, hear, see. I get visions too, but clairsentience is my strongest now, so I kind of lean on that a bit more.
I think questions are great. I always tell people questions.
Yeah.
It's a great way to do the discovery work.
Yeah, we're both big time feelers. So like it's so visceral, like on our end, like it's something when it's kind of difficult at times because we feel so much, and our body, we're very physical channelers. So as the energy moves through, my body wants to do all sorts of stuff. Like even in the conversation, or like my body wants to do anything but sit here and look like a human being as the information is coming through, right? So it's like there's so much. It's very visceral. Like in fact, when I don't know when I started like channeling, higher aspects, because I thought I was just experiencing it as physical pain, because it would build up like tension in the body, because I didn't know that you can roll your eyes and your hands move all over the place. So my body would be feeling the energy that's wanting to come through all the time. And like, I would pretty much be crippled by it. And it was, once I realized what was actually happening through the forcing of it to come out, like when all the different voices and all the different dialects came through, like, the mudras were coming out, and I couldn't really stop it. I could, but I couldn't. And then through that, I realized that, that's actually a thing. I had to find out what the heck that was. And then found that, oh, that's a thing. And once that happens, you're like, okay, well, you can lean into it and get into that flow state and allow it to come through. Music is super, super helpful for that.
Yeah.
Kind of recognizing how it feels in the body, because you can kind of surf the music and have that move through you, and watch and recognize how the body moves when that comes through.
Yeah, even now I'm like I'm usually like
doing
my whole
tapping.
body's fine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like
We're like together,
Yeah.
in each other's field, trying like,
and
because
even
usually I'm all over the place.
yeah. And even if it's not like a physical vibration, which right now, like I'm just physically, usually it's just like I can feel the energy, like a layer of energy around me that's just vibrating, you know, especially when I'm in like a channeling state, and I'll just be like vibrating.
Yeah.
It's harder for me to act human than it is to not.
Facts. Am I acting human right? Am I acting human right now in
normally
public
I'm all over
places?
yeah.
I used to go to a lot of festivals, and I used to dance with my hands all the time, and people would
Yes.
comment on it constantly, and it made me feel so
Yeah.
weird. And then after I learned what light language was, I was like, oh, that's what I was
Oh,
doing. I was
yes.
channeling energy through my hands, and people would like pay
Absolutely.
attention to me because of all the energy that was spraying out everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love slinging
Yeah.
magic at like festivals.
Yeah, I
You
go,
just-
I go back and like just watch videos that I've made in the past, and I'm always like, you know, and all my, it's just me dancing, and I'll be like, you know, I was always using my hands. It might not have been like mudras, but I, you know, always like, yeah, you know, like, I was like, oh, okay, so it's like just something we've been doing our whole life, really.
Yeah, we're always channeling. Like legit, everybody, I feel from my perspective, everybody is always in it. It's channeling. It's just like, what are you connected to? Like, what information are you channeling through? Like, even the way that we communicate with our hands, we're intending to express more information. Our body's responding to the energy that's moving through us. Or when we express emotions, you know, when we smile, you know, we're smiling because of the energy that's moving through. Or if we're sad, we cry and we frown. And that's not like a conscious thing that we're necessarily doing. It's the body's response to the energy that's moving through us. And I think if we recognize that we're always in a channeling, like we're constantly channeling something, then we can kind of lean into it and recognize that essentially the entire body is like a video game controller, and like every little muscle and every movement and every mood or whatever it is that you're doing with the body it's like playing, it's like your higher aspects or the energy. Just keep it, you know, open to whatever the energy is playing through our body, our physical body, which is why we can really potentiate the effects by layering on the movements, right? Whatever it is that we're doing. When people are dancing, they're oftentimes, you know, channeling more energy than they recognize. I've got lots of people on like social media that are channeling codes without actually realizing that they're channeling codes, whether that's, you know, rapping or, you know, modulating their voice while they're
you can hear it. You can hear it while they're doing it. Yeah.
Or they'll use their
They'll
hands too.
Yeah.
So they're like saying, they'll modulate the voice, but they don't realize that they're actually literally modulating their energy field, which is really cool.
Fascinating. I also had like 2017, I had this Kundalini awakening, and all of a sudden I just started verbalizing all this light language I didn't know it was at the time, right? And then stopped doing that for a little while. I went to a Native American site, and then all of a sudden it just started pouring out. Like I couldn't even stop. Like it was just, I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this right now, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it just hits you and comes on.
Yeah. When I was first activated, like I said, I couldn't really stop it. Like it was almost uncontrollable, but because it was just, it had been building up for so long that it was ready to burst out. And so I was honestly, I wouldn't leave the house much because I was really insecure about it. And, you know, like, because I would run into somebody's energy field if we were out, you know, at the grocery store. And as soon as I'd bump into their field, you know, some code would be coming through. Or like you said, anytime I would go for a walk, I would go out, you know, a nature walk and go to like these abandoned buildings or whatever, it would just kick in and I'd be expressing light language and letting out codes and clearing stuff that I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, it can come in and not almost feel uncontrollable, but at the same time, controllable at the same time.
Do you feel that now that you do this for like your main thing, okay, like in life, I want to call it work or a job, but that's what you do, okay? So do you feel that kind of, I don't want to call it regulates necessarily, but does that not happen as much in public now because you do this for your full time? And the reason I ask that is I used to have really bad anxiety and depression and chronic pain. And as you were talking, I realized part of that might be because I am a channeler and it wasn't coming through in the way that it needed to. And I was so incredibly hypersensitive to everything. And now I was like, oh, maybe that's why I had so much pain in my body, because now
Absolutely.
I'm like pain free, but it's because I do this type of work and I funnel all that constantly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes a big difference. But because I do it so often, I often will want to take a break and just be human. And
Yeah.
oftentimes when that happens is where the energy will start to build up. That tension will start to build up in the body. So like a big milestone for me to get to, to the next level is to really make sure that I'm doing it all the time and to lean into like physical exercise more, because it makes a huge difference. Like if like I said, if I were to just let go, I would be literally channeling all the time. I'd be speaking, moving my fingers as I talk about whatever it is, but my eyes would be rolling all over the place too, which is a little bit, it makes you a little bit insecure, but makes a huge difference. Yeah, letting it out,
Just
letting it
letting
out
it
makes,
run through you.
yeah,
Yeah. Being as channeling as much as you can. That really just helped me
yeah,
too, of like, hey, maybe because humaning is hard. It's so
yeah.
hard sometimes. And I'm just like, I just want to be channeling and doing that all day long.
Absolutely. I think a lot
So,
of people are experiencing that too. I think as a lot of people are getting activated more and more, they are coming up with, like any kind of misalignments are getting magnified,
yeah.
right? And so, they're people are getting sick more or whatever it is, because their body's screaming out, "Hey, we're trying to show you something." Like something is trying to get your attention, right? The tension in the body is like, say, paying attention here.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are experiencing like chronic pain and not recognizing that if they were allowed, they allowed themselves to move their body and maybe they are a channel, allow that to move through it. It makes a huge difference.
For sure. I get
Yeah.
really crunchy in my body and I'm like, I have to go move. Like I have to go on a walk. Like I have to go on an hour walk outside, power walk to get this out.
Absolutely.
Yes. Elena, what has been your biggest challenge with channeling, do you feel?
So getting my human out of the way has been my biggest.
Yeah.
And I say that because I've been working on my clairvoyance, my visuals. So when I'm like laying down and my eyes are closed, there's always images and things going on. And I started to realize that was happening. And then when I would shift my awareness to see what was like, what visuals, it would kind of dissipate. So I started to realize, so I'm like, so how do I get my human out of the way? Like my mind, keep it somewhere, but still be able to put my awareness to that visual so I can see it, and sometimes it doesn't do that, especially when I'm like my nervous system is just calm and I'm in a good flow state at home or whatever. I'll get these profound visions where I'm like, wow, this whole like, little movie play out. But it seems like when I'm trying to, especially trying to like practice with it, that's where my human is too much in the way. So I'm trying to find that middle ground where I can see it and not make it go away when I bring my awareness to it. So, and I know that has to do with trying. When I try, it doesn't. So there's some kind of middle ground I'm trying to find so that I can get that better worked out. But yeah, definitely getting my human out of the way is the main issue. I have noticed when I go into meditation though, I'll visualize myself. I'll go up one and be like, okay, I'm observing my human, then I'll go up again, observing the observer, the human, and I'll go up a bunch, which has really helped. But yeah, I'm just playing with that and get the human out of the way. Sometimes I realize when I'm like moving, that kind of keeps my mind distracted. So movement will really help me to keep my mind distracted, and then I can bring my awareness to it. So yeah, I'm just playing with things to see what works best. But yeah, that would definitely be the biggest challenge. The human, my monkey mind.
Clairvoyance for me is one that I am continuing to work on because I don't really see images in my mind's eye. Like I feel images, which is kind of hard to describe to people. So with the clairvoyance, I feel that when I'm digging and trying to sort things and like figure things out, it just zips right out of my brain like that. So it's just like allowing the things and the information to come forward and just sitting with it. because my mind races like that too constantly.
Yeah.
Thoughts.
Yeah. I want to be in like receiving mode instead of like trying, you know, just letting it drop in. So yeah, just trying to find that middle ground is really, really where I'm trying to balance out right now.
I love where you talked about observing your human and then going up the observer ladder. I think that's a very useful tool.
Yeah, it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I read a journal entry I wrote like 2 or 3 years ago now that was me saying that. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what just happened, but I was watching my human and then I was watching me watching my human and then I was watching another one. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know what I was talking about. You know, it didn't make sense at the time, but I was like, okay, so I get it now. You know, so that's why I like to keep a journal. I go back and I read them and I'm like, okay, you know, things start piecing together. So
Yeah. I think that's a great tool. What about you, Ty? What has been the biggest challenge for you?
I think coming to terms with, I guess, the weirdness of who I am in some
Okay.
ways. Like, you know, like there's a huge part of me that really wants to continue to play human, but as I am going through my natural processes, that gets harder and harder to wear that kind of costume. So like knowing, like, even, you know, even now, for example, as we're like kind of sitting here, my body wants to do all sorts of stuff. Like it's wanting to move the body and move and make sounds and all sorts of things. And that's what it wants to do all the time. Where essentially, you know, anytime I'm anywhere, it wants to be doing that. And allowing myself to do that is really like a big challenge, being okay with the weirdness. And the more that I do that, you know, yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal, but it's just weird being weird sometimes.
Yeah. I totally get that. I feel like I'm still going through that. I have kind of shifted the content that I'm making to talk about a lot more esoteric things that are not tangible. And sometimes I'm watching my videos, I'm like, girl, like,
Do it.
and I'm like, we gotta do it.
We gotta do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
definitely been through that. I'll be like, Stacey, what are you
Yeah,
doing?
what are we doing here?
It's cool. We got this.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
like,
when you
I'll
feel
go to
your
the gym,
truest
but,
self. Oh, go ahead.
oh, so I was just saying that, like, even at, like, we'll go to the gym, and I'm to the point, like, at the beginning, it was a little awkward because I have to let it out. Like, especially if I'm going to be moving energy through, so I'm coding and doing all sorts of stuff as I'm doing whatever it is, or having to let out the energy. And then over time, it gets easier. Like nobody cares. Yeah, nobody cares. They're in their own world, or at least they don't say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, thank you for being a trailblazer too, because you know you're probably creating space for other people that want to do those things and kind of just
It's not
like
as scary.
down that. Right.
Yeah, it's not as scary as we think it is. Like we think it's scary. Like going through, I remember when I started to fly a bit more, once I was kind of activated, I was kind of tripped out because it's the same thing. When there's all that energy and all of the stuff going on, I have to let it out or it just like cooks me. So I'll be letting it out in the airport and nobody even looks at me. Like, you know, like they're just like, oh, it's just another guy doing whatever he's doing. But yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons I like music festivals so much because there's so many people that are just doing their own, like they're in their own realms, doing their own weird things.
Yeah.
And just like you can just do whatever.
In your little world.
100%.
Well, Elena, what is the most fun aspect of channeling for you?
The most fun aspect of channeling. You mean as far as like an aspect that I'm channeling of myself? Is that what you mean?
Or just like what's the most fun thing about it to you?
Yeah.
Or however you want to ingest that. And
I just want to make sure. I love to be able to just offer healing to my body. I didn't realize that most of what I carried wasn't even mine. Like I remember the day I figured that out, I was like, oh my God. So just knowing that I can get into that state and just shift energy and go back and clear timelines and old traumas, to me that's fun because you know I feel so much. So when I can get that off, I just feel so much lighter and more like myself, and I can and go enjoy myself and be happy. So that's been really helpful for me because there's just so much just trauma that I didn't even know I had, even just in this life, that you know he's taught me a couple really cool techniques that I'll go back and rewrite them and re-upload them, and you know, and it's just been so helpful. you know, I look back a year ago and I'm like, God, I don't even recognize myself. I'm like, who was that? You know, so it's just been profound, and I'm just going through and just remembering more and more, learning more and more to just try to get to a space where I can just be myself and, you know, feel good and happy. You know.
I feel like healing is so difficult in the beginning, and then once you get into it, you're like, thank God I'm crying. Thank God, thank God I'm like having the shadow work process right now.
Oh gosh, the last year, I mean, it was probably every day crying and crying. You know, we went through a whole lot of different things, and it was just, yeah, I mean, but being able to be grounded in it and know, like, okay, I know what's going on, even though I'm crying all day and I'm thinking all these crazy things and whatever. But if you're grounded in it, and you're like, okay, I know what's going on, I can help myself, or, you know, get support. So, but yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, but it's so rewarding. I love crying.
Yeah,
too.
I'm always looking forward to the cry. Like just the other day, I was really like, you can feel the cry wanting to come up. Like there's a lot of the emotions that are deep down, and oftentimes, you know, when we work on ourselves, we shift out a lot of energy. But sometimes the actual emotions and the chemical release through the emotions, like the tears, it builds up, and you really want to let that out, and not. It wasn't getting there through that, because a lot of times I was just burping and dry heaving and you know, yawning to get it out, but it hits different when you actually allow the emotions to move through you.
Sometimes crying is the only thing that will do it for me. I'm like, we just need to sit down and just like have a crying session.
Absolutely. And I know, like last night, your tears were burning, and I've experienced that too. You can feel like the chemicals coming out. It's just like different. Just sometimes they just burn.
They get those chemicals out for sure.
Yeah. Well, Ty, what's the most fun for you now that, or maybe it is crying?
What's the most fun for you? I think it's just the magic of it all. You know, I'm very technical minded, so recognizing that, you know, there's actual practical functionality taking place when we're doing all that we're doing, whether it's, you know, just any aspect of anything that we're doing. Essentially, there's always magic there. And I think being able to tap into that magic more and more, and recognizing there's like really no limits to that, is what I think is the coolest part. Is just leaning into the magic, letting it flow.
Yeah. All the synchronicities. Yes. I love. I mean, the synchronicities. It's just so. And you think after a while, you just like you lose the spark of it. But every time it happens, we're like, you know. I love it. Just following the synchronicities.
Synchronicities are the most fun.
Yeah.
Well, Elena, do you have any tips for anybody that wants to get into I mean, we say get into channeling, everybody's channeling, but that wants to do it more intentionally?
Yes. So, and I went through this whole lesson myself. So, you really want to sit down and set parameters. You want to have boundaries. You want to be specific on what you're channeling, what you're bringing forth. And intention is key. You know, I know when I set that intention, what I'm going to channel through is what's coming through. You know, and I remember shifting from believing and knowing. Like for me, believing, there was still like some shadow of a doubt, as they would say. But when I got to a point where I'm like, oh no, I know this is how it is. So like when I set that intention and I set my boundaries and my parameters, and just let it come forth, that's like super important, because you don't, you know, like you said earlier, you don't want to plug into streams you know that may have encrypted whatever going on, you know. So if I would recommend one major tip, it would be that, you know, and I went through that personally. So setting those boundaries and parameters are super important.
I love that you're speaking also about switching over into knowing. And I got to that place in my journey too, where, you know, I can have doubts over here in human land, but when I sit down to channel for somebody, like that's a fact. Things that are coming through. Yes.
And I have noticed even that, like, when working on myself, there was always still kind of like a little doubt behind it. But like when I'm working with somebody else and they ask a question, that like stimulates my channel more. And I'll hear the answer like that. He'll be like, oh, we'll ask him this. And I'll ask him like, oh, but for some reason, when I'm working just on myself, sometimes there's still that like, well, I don't know, overthinking or, you know, not believing what I heard, you know. But yeah, when it's like with somebody else, it's like, no doubt, you know.
That really helped me with my channeling abilities is working with others, because working on self, there's always like bias and you're like in your head and all these different
Yeah.
things. But like working with
Exactly.
others, it's like, okay, I have to be a lot more intentional about this and like
Mhm.
believe in myself and my magic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit
Yeah.
easier. Yeah. What about you, Ty? What tips do you have for people with channeling?
I I would say, um, yeah, when it comes to channeling, I always recommend to, depends on what we're like, what type of channeling we're talking about, right? So if people are connecting to, they want to channel information from other beings, that's not really my forte. So I wouldn't be able to give like much advice. So I'm always recommending people to channel through aspects of self, which is a very like natural process, I guess, when you're doing it. But it's like she said, it's, I think we've learned over time and learned the hard way sometimes, especially with working with people, is that working with the right type of structures and parameters and setting the intentions is really important, because we've seen a lot of people, not to like scare, not to be scary, but a lot of people get connected in with streams of information, and then it goes through the personality structure, their ego structure, the structures in their field, the code in their field, and it can kind of come in and create distortions, which can be a pain to break away from down the line, right? So it's, I really just think we only need to work with ourselves. Is just kind of my perspective. Is like we got enough going on, each of us. Like we're like connecting in with more of who we are is what I always recommend. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that's solid advice too. I tell people, and, this is my perspective, okay, but that all of these different beings and different, things out here in the ethers and the cosmos is all you. You're also, it's
Yeah,
coming from source, right? But
absolutely.
what you filtering through can shift perspectives and experiences and lenses and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
when you do realize it's all you, you sometimes have less of a draw to want to channel different things. So you're like, I'm just going to channel higher facets of me. Yeah.
It's a paradox. It's
Right.
all and it's not.
Yes. So Elena, what do you have as far as your offerings for other people and Ty as well?
Well, I don't currently have any offerings, but I do have socials where I do post, activations or healings. I'm currently just still not comfortable putting out sessions and such like that with clients, but I do hope to get there one day. But for now, I'm just kind of in that phase where I just want to practice more. I'm still trying to figure out what works best in how I move through things. So hopefully eventually, yes. But for now, yeah, you can follow me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Ty-El Elena. Yeah, and I do want to mention, he'll tap more into it, but we do have a shop where we sell bracelets, necklaces, just wearable tech, all kinds of shungite products that he will personally encode with light codes. So yeah, islingmagic.com, but I'll let him
Yeah, she
give me
helps
the
me
breakdown on that.
she helps me with everything. Like I'm a toddler, so everything's, which I need to be. Yeah, otherwise I couldn't get anything done. But yeah, we have a shop. So islingmagic.com if you're interested in like quantum architecturally inspired devices and tools. It's all stuff that I essentially would design for myself. I like shungite's like my absolute favorite mineral because of the structures behind it, which we share stuff on the website because I could go on for like an hour about that. But we like bracelets.
That's one of them here.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
beautiful. I love that. I love the colors on
Yeah.
that.
yeah, so that's our crystalline one, and then that's our the shungite
The
one.
shungite, yeah. Those are beautiful.
Yeah, so it's like the alchemy of it is like we take a lot of pride in the alchemy of it, but what makes it a little bit more unique is that we do put light codes into everything. So specifically for the person that orders it, and yeah, and then I offer, I guess, sessions, private one-on-one sessions, and we do donation-based quantum healing events each month as well, and then sometimes throw some other ones in there too. But yeah, if anybody's interested, you just go to islingmagic.com.
Could you tell me a little bit more about what it means to be a quantum architect? Because I love that title, and I'm actually meeting a couple people that have that energetic signature, and I'm like, oh, you need to go see Ty. I'm like, he's a person to go see for that.
It's fancy words, really.
Okay.
It is fancy words, but it's accurate. It's probably one of the most accurate titles of labels, if there were to be one, for kind of like the role that I'm learning that I'm embodying, which essentially just means that I specialize in working with energetic structures. So essentially at a template level, structural level, working with code, geomathematical information, and being a bridge to build structures, right? So that's the magic. It's working with the energetic structures.
Is that something I have some personal questions.
No, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that something that downloaded when you got your light language, like that all come as like a collective package, or is that something that came later on?
I personally think that we're all quantum architects.
Mhm.
Everything that we do, like every aspect of whatever we create or our reality, we're constantly manifesting through these structures that's everywhere. So being a quantum architect is really just about recognizing your particular role and how you work with energy behind the scenes. And with me, it's very structurally based. So if I like, my gift would be working with structures, creating geometry, creating container, essentially just working with code. But yeah, what was the question again?
Uh, Hold on, let me get it back because I was locked in. Okay. Is that something that downloaded all as like a whole package, like with
Yeah,
your light language, or did it come on later with the geometric structuring?
it's part of who I am. Like it's like legitimately just that's what I am essentially, is this type of code. So it becomes very natural for me to work with it because it's part of who I am. So it's not really something that I've learned per se. It's just the more that I've embodied more of who I am, that is a natural aspect of it. And then it's just about learning how to lean into those gifts or abilities.
Do you have a lot of people that come to you that are wanting to work on their like human with their physical structuring?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think
That's
so
one of my
with you
favorite.
being able to template shift.
Yeah, the physical
Yeah.
body is just an energetic structure at its core. It's just what we call physicality. But yeah, you can work if you work at the template level. Obviously, it will eventually make its way down into the physical. Because yeah, like we were talking about before, working, having physical pain or whatever occurs in the physical body, there's an issue at the template level. There's the code behind the scenes has some kind of misalignment. So we can really make some profound healing in the physical body through working with these energetic structures. But it goes across the board. That's what's so cool about it, and that's why we call it magic, is because it's a way to get you from point A to point B. It's like you're essentially building the structures with the code to help the manifestation come up more, faster, just to manifest faster. It's essentially a manifestation code or manifestation tool.
That's awesome. Do y'all have a class that's coming up on the 27th?
Yeah, we have
Right?
a donation-based quantum healing event. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, those are the ones he does monthly. So yeah,
Yeah.
this will be in what, Cancer?
Yeah. So we're
So you're
leaning
planning?
into the alchemical themes that are naturally available as our sun moves through the different constellations. We leave it really open to whatever needs to come through, right? And whatever's for the highest good, but recognizing the quantum architecture behind the scenes, we can take advantage of the alchemical themes that are naturally available. So as our sun, based on the actual alignment of the cosmic body, it's not like, I'm not sure mainstream astrology, like what that's a little bit different. But based on, if we look at the sun, what constellations are in the sun? And at this time, it's going to be Cancer. So we lean into the alchemical themes that are naturally available to us, that are happening all the time, that we move through, whether it's like emotional healing or, whatever, like working with elements. Certain things come up in the collective, like naturally, that we all work through. But knowing that they are available to us, then we can lean into them even more, and you can really potentiate the effects of the alchemy.
As we're closing up here, I have a question. If you'll have any advice for the Lionsgate portal that is coming up, if everybody is watching this before August.
Yeah. So this is a really special Lionsgate. based on the actual authentic alignments, it's going to line up pretty much spot on with what people, usually term as Lionsgate. So there's like Lionsgate as the date that usually is what people work with, right? 8/8 is usually how people celebrate it. But where Lionsgate actually comes from is the alignment with Leo. And so this year, it's actually like right spot on. So it's a really powerful, potent energy for transformation at this time, and to bring through pretty much whatever it is, the themes that you're naturally working on, to lean into it. So yeah, I would say do whatever it is that inspires you, whatever you feel guided, whatever your channel says that you should be doing at the time. I say lean into that. I don't really like rules to say like this, you should do this or do that, but yeah,
follow what feels
it's a
right.
really powerful alchemy this year. It's really, really cool and really special.
Yeah, because last year was what, like on the 16th? I know it felt different last year.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah, there's a certain window, but yeah, this one's going to be really powerful.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, we're going to do an event for that one too. So we got this one on Saturday, and then we'll have we'll do Lionsgate, or I'm not sure what the date is, but essentially we'll be doing one around that time when the portal is open for Lionsgate, another donation based one.
And they can find that on your website?
Yep, or on my socials. Yeah, go to Ty-El Feels on TikTok, or the other ones, I don't know. islingmagic.com.
islingmagic.com.
Well, I will also put all of y'all's information under the description here, so everybody can click very easily.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. And everybody's always looking for something to do for the Lionsgate, so everybody makes sure to sign up for that. Yes. Well, I want to thank y'all so much for joining me today. This is an awesome chat. I was like locked in the whole time. Yeah. So thank y'all. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you for inviting us. Yes.